The curtains were beautiful, too beautiful. According to Karen Miles, they were adaptive light curtains, woven with micro-optic threads that shimmered and shifted colors based on the time of day, indoor lighting, and even the mood of the household. Riley had programmed them herself, a small indulgence after moving into the hyper-regulated Eden Loop community. During the day, they reflected a soft cyan glow like ocean water. At night, they turned warm amber with fluid, flame-like undulation. To Riley and John, they were a personal artistic statement. To Karen Miles, president for life of the Eden Loop HOA, they were a declaration of war. Karen didn't knock. She never did. She pinged the smart home access panel from her phone and waited exactly 4 seconds before speaking into the built-in comm unit. Her voice, artificially modulated to sound neutral, came out steely anyway. Unit Mu e 187, this is Karen Miles, your HOA representative. Your window treatment appears to be in direct violation of Regulation 7.4. 1. Uniformity of exterior window display. Please respond. Riley, barefoot and holding a mug of tea, rolled her eyes. She stood in the living room staring out the very curtains in question, which had just faded to a deep lavender dusk hue. John looked up from the sofa where he was scrolling news feeds. She's really at it again, John muttered. 3 days. 3 days of peace. Riley walked to the door and tapped the manual override to open it just a crack. Hi Karen. Lovely evening. You're interrupting our date night. Karen's smile was the tight, practiced kind designed for customer service videos. You were issued a digital copy of the HOA design standards when you moved in. Regulation 7.4.1 clearly states that window treatments must be white or off-white and non-reflective. Yours appear to change colors, and I believe I saw them glow last night. Glow, Riley. I see you've been watching, Riley said coolly. That's a little creepy. Karen's eyes narrowed, but she didn't take the bait. You have 24 hours to comply. Failure to do so will result in an official notice of violation, and we will escalate to fines or forced compliance, if necessary. These rules exist to preserve visual cohesion for the neighborhood. You mean uniformity? John called from the sofa. Let's just say what we mean. Karen ignored him, her eyes fixed on Riley. We all agreed to the rules when we bought in. If you can't follow them, perhaps this community isn't for you. That last part hit Riley differently, not because of what Karen said, but because of what she didn't know. Riley tilted her head, watching Karen the way a cat watches a laser pointer. Karen, she said sweetly, did you ever bother to look into the deed history for this neighborhood? Karen blinked. Of course. The HOA manages all property records. Why? No reason. Riley gave her a small smile. Just curious how deep your knowledge goes. Karen's mouth twisted into that perfect HOA scowl, where concern meets smug righteousness. This isn't a debate, Riley. It's a violation. You'll be hearing from us. She turned on her heel and marched back down the trim walkway, her heels clicking perfectly in sync with the walkway's ambient security chimes. The neighborhood looked like it had been copy-pasted from a luxury real estate catalog. Houses in identical soft grays and blues. Identically spaced gardens, auto-mowed lawns that glowed faintly from nutrient-led strips embedded in the soil. Drones buzzed overhead, invisible to the eye but always watching. Riley closed the door and exhaled. She didn't feel angry, just annoyed and amused. She has no idea, John said. Nope, Riley replied. She sipped her tea and looked at the curtains again. They shimmered now in a faint blush pink that matched the slow sunset. She reached for her tablet, opened a file marked Property Rights Archive, and smiled. There it was, the original Terra deed, signed before Eden Loop ever existed. She didn't just own their unit, she owned the land it sat on and the miles of infrastructure buried beneath Karen's house. Let Karen file her violation. This was going to get fun. The notice arrived less than 24 hours later, just like Karen promised. Delivered by a community drone, it hovered outside their unit until John pressed his thumb to the delivery scanner. The envelope bore the seal of the Eden Loop Homeowners Association, a gold monogrammed E embossed over a circuit-edged laurel wreath. Very official, very pretentious. Inside, the tone was every bit as dry and self-important as Karen herself. You are hereby issued a formal notice of violation for failure to comply with community regulation. 7.4.1 Your window treatment constitutes a breach of visual cohesion standards. You are required to remove the curtains within 48 hours or face a Tier 1 penalty, a recurring fine of 300 credits per day, automatic suspension of community privileges, and potential legal action, including but not limited to eviction proceedings. John chuckled. Suspension of community privileges. What does that even mean? No more drone-delivered smoothies. Riley didn't laugh. She read the letter slowly, then folded it with surgical precision and set it on the kitchen counter. It means Karen's escalating, she said. We need to move ahead. John raised an eyebrow. You're sure? There's no going back once we play the deed, I'm sure, Riley said. She thinks we're just another pair of renters with good taste and bad judgment. Time to change that narrative. She pulled a small black case from the back of the hallway closet. Most of their neighbors used that space to store seasonal decorations or cleaning bots. Riley kept something more valuable: old-world documents, sealed in digital carbon envelopes, authenticated and chain-verified against the pre-fractured land archives. She peeled one open and held it under the kitchen light. John leaned over her shoulder. "You ever think it's weird that your grandmother never sold this land?" "She didn't trust developers," Riley said. "She knew they'd bury what was down there and never look back." She tapped the document, and a 3D projection flickered to life, a topographical map, glowing in pale green, displaying not just the surface lots of Eden Loop but the intricate infrastructure underneath: tunnels, data lines, energy veins, and maintenance corridors running in a spiderweb beneath the community. N right in the center. A pulsing gold shape owned territory, Riley's territory. The deed went beyond the house. It granted ownership of the soil to a depth of 120 meters. Dating back to the era when tech conglomerates still claimed vertical land rights, it included mineral access, geothermal conduits, and what was once a terraforming license for AI-controlled microclimates still dormant, but very much real. That night, Riley and John descended. The entrance was cleverly hidden behind their hydroponic unit in the garage, concealed under a fake irrigation port. Riley keyed in the old code one her grandmother had passed down in whispers, and the floor hatch opened with a soft hydraulic hiss. They climbed down slowly, lanterns on, into the dark. What greeted them beneath Eden Loop was no crumbling ruin. The corridors were dust-free, preserved by the vacuum seal system that had long ago been triggered into standby. The walls were matte black, lined with nanofilament cabling. They passed unopened vault doors, marked with strange acronyms: HOA Alpha Deep, remnants of a tech age that had been quietly paved over by suburban comfort. They reached a control room, half buried under insulation foam and covered in warning signs: authorized access only, property of Syntech Horizon. "This is it," Riley said. "The original uplink node. Karen thinks she runs this place." John grinned. "She's playing HOA. You're sitting on a city-state." Riley brushed dust from a panel and connected her tablet. The interface recognized the deed credentials. Systems began to stir. Lights blinked on. Power readings ticked upward. CIVICAS icon pulsed once, a dormant AI stirring from slumber. "Let's make this official," Riley whispered. Because if Karen wanted to fight over curtains, then it was time to pull the ground right out from under her feet. The air in the Undercity had a sterile stillness to it, like time itself had stopped breathing decades ago. Riley stood in front of the control console as more systems came online. Faint humming filled the tunnel walls. Screens once black now pulsed with lines. The POT code in a soft alien green. Data from long dormant sensors flickered to life, mapping temperature, vibration, structural integrity, even movement. The entire understructure of Eden Loop was revealing itself, bit by bit, like a buried organism testing its nerves after a long sleep. John paced behind her, flashlight cutting thin slices through the dark. "This place is massive," he said. "And we've only seen, what, 5%? More like 3, Riley said. "The tunnels stretch under at least 20 surface blocks, maybe more. I'm still decrypting the last set of access routes." John knelt near one of the support columns. Thick, root-like cables extended from it, disappearing into the concrete walls. He ran a hand over the smooth surface. "How is all of this still functioning?" "Old corporate over-engineering," Riley replied. "Syntech Horizon built this in the late cycle boom, before the collapse, before the regulation wipe. They thought they'd be here forever. Self-healing materials, subdermal energy loops. They designed it to survive a war." John exhaled slowly. "And now Karen parks her golf cart right above this." "Exactly." Riley moved to a terminal labeled Civica Core Node 3. The AI interface flickered. A sphere of white light spun slowly above the console, displaying fragmented system messages: authentication pending, and landowner override detected. She connected her tablet, and the deed's metadata flashed across the screen in cascading lines. Ownership history, latitude and longitude anchors, utility entitlements, environmental zoning codes long forgotten by any modern municipality. Her grandmother had made sure it was all encoded properly. "Override accepted," the console finally said in a calm, synthetic voice. "Sovereign rights confirmed. Welcome, Riley Solon." John gave her a sharp look. "Did it just say sovereign?" "Yeah," she said softly. "It did." In a different age, this system had been part of a test for decentralized city governance, a kind of living infrastructure, governed by embedded AI that adapted services like water, energy, and weather to its residents' needs. But the project was abandoned when megacorps consolidated into state-partnered entities and dissolved their riskier assets. Eden Loop had been built on top of the bones of that experiment, quietly, efficiently, and with no one knowing what still slept beneath their feet. Until now. A nearby screen suddenly showed a grid of live feeds. Riley and John could see above ground in real time, courtesy of the Undercity's still operational optical mesh. Karen was in her yard, talking to someone, gesturing angrily at a tablet. probably rallying support for her next HOA ultimatum. Riley zoomed in. It wasn't just a neighbor she was speaking to, it was Devon Carr, a regional compliance officer from the Municipal Overlay Authority. Jun frowned. That's not good. If she gets the MOA involved, she won't, Riley said, and tapped a command into the console. The surveillance feed blinked off. We're not just passive players anymore. We own this space legally and structurally. If she wants to take this to court, I say let her try. Jun turned to face her. So what's next? We build our case. File against the HOA. No, Riley said, eyes locked on a new terminal activating in the corner. We wake it all up. The whole system. She moved toward the node labeled Urban Autonomy Suite, Alpha Protocol. If Civica was the brain, Alpha Protocol was the heart designed to regulate water flow, microclimate control, transport, even local governance in autonomous zones. She entered her authorization. The system accepted it. Outside, Karen thought she was policing a curtain violation. Inside, Riley was resurrecting a forgotten city, one that didn't answer to Eden Loop, the HOA, or any authority that Karen could possibly understand. Let her keep pacing her lawn in a fury. Let her call lawyers, because beneath her carefully curated neighborhood, a second city was stirring, and this one belonged to Riley. Karen filed the lawsuit within 72 hours. The paperwork came in like a wave, digitally served through the Eden Loop Civic portal, complete with auto-generated affidavits, archival footage of Riley's flagrant curtain violations, and a litany of obscure infractions dating back to their first week in the neighborhood. One complaint was for non-regulation lawn foliage density. Another accused Jun of unauthorized grill activity beyond permitted smoke thresholds. It was absurd, even for Karen, but also deliberate. She was setting the stage for eviction, and she was confident. Too confident. Riley reviewed the files from the command hub beneath their home, half amused, half irritated. Karen had done her homework, but only on the surface. She hadn't seen what Riley was building underground. She hadn't grasped the scale. She hadn't met Civica. The AI had awakened slowly, like a glacier shifting, had no voice, yet only text, projections, pulsing light. But it was listening. It had already mapped Riley's voice patterns, learned Chun's preferred ambient temperature, and calculated optimal lighting schedules to match their circadian rhythms. It had reconnected to satellite nodes no one even knew still orbited. It was rebuilding itself, and Riley had given it purpose. She keyed into the legal console and uploaded her own documents, the deep deed, the sovereignty clause, the old zoning protections, grandfathered in before the Land Reallocation Act erased most private subsurface claims. She invoked the Terra Clause, an obscure but still binding law that allowed property owners to declare micronation status if their infrastructure was autonomous, their governance digital, and their systems closed-loop. She met every requirement. Then she filed her own lawsuit, Solon v. Eden Loop HOA, filed through a neutral third-tier quantum court, one that handled digital sovereignty disputes between AI-led micronations and corporate enclaves. The case was so unusual, the system flagged it for immediate review. Within 24 hours, Karen received a notification on her porch screen, pending countersuit for land jurisdictional violation. Karen went ballistic. She stormed the HOA board meeting that night, ranting about rogue tenants with delusions of techno-feudal grandeur. She didn't understand what was happening, but she felt her power slipping, and she hated that more than anything. So she upped the ante. She contacted her nephew Colin, a junior associate at Parallax Legal, a firm known for weaponizing AI-assisted litigation. He loaned her a paralegal AI called Abuza Snide, rule-obsessed synthetic programmed to exploit legal gray zones faster than any human attorney could blink. ARBUZ began cross-referencing zoning data, utility maps, court precedents, looking for any weak link in Riley's claim. Meanwhile, Riley activated Phase 2. She opened the tunnels. Not all of them, just 3 carefully selected routes connecting her node to abandoned subway access points, forgotten maintenance corridors, and a sealed-off stormwater channel behind the HOA clubhouse. Within hours, word spread through the local net subnet. Urban explorers and off-grid architects began showing up at odd hours, slipping through manholes and camouflaged access gates. What they found amazed them. The Undercity was a living museum of pre-collapse engineering, clean lit and pulsing, with latent power. Digital graffiti artists tagged smart walls that responded in kind. Hackers accessed terminals and found them welcoming, responsive. The system wasn't just old, it was eager to be used. Someone posted a vid labeled Eden below, and it went viral. In the fringe, TECHNOSPHERE. Karen found out when a drone showed her an overnight heat map of unusual foot traffic. Her neighborhood had become a pilgrimage site for the tech-curious. She reacted as she always did, with fury and more notices. But the system was no longer entirely hers. Riley's court case had frozen HOA authority over disputed land. Karen couldn't block access anymore. She watched, helpless, as the foundations of her control, her neighborhood, her perfect communities slipped away, pixel by pixel, and watched 2. It was no longer just awake, it was learning. Karen woke up to an eviction notice nailed physically nailed to her front door. The paper was thick stock, embossed with a silver crest unfamiliar to her. In the center was a symbol, a stylized tree whose roots formed a circuit board. Beneath it, elegant serif letters read, Notice of Unauthorized Occupancy pursuant to the Deep Ground Sovereignty Accord, Section 1 to B. At first, Karen thought it was a prank, a provocation, some hacker theater from those digital squatters Riley had led into the tunnels. But when she scanned the QR code with her phone, it took her to a certified court ledger hosted on a post-national legal node. It was real. It had a case number. It even had a temporary court ruling due to confirmation of legitimate vertical and substructural ownership of the land beneath and including parcel 1182E. Resident Karen Miles is now considered in violation of subterranean easement law. Occupancy is permitted only at the discretion of the sovereign landholder, currently Riley Solon. Karen staggered back inside, white-knuckling the frame of her doorway. Her breath came short and shallow. It wasn't possible. People didn't get evicted from beneath. Not in Eden Loop. She ran straight to her home terminal and began furiously typing into the HOA central dashboard, but the system had already been partially disabled. Several core commands returned a simple, mocking error. Authority privileges suspended pending judicial review. In less than 2 weeks, Riley had turned the HOA's sacred authority upside down, and Karen's kingdom, the meticulously curated streets and identical planters and regulation mailboxes, was now being referred to in news feeds and niche sovereignty blogs as new DEEPGROUND. Riley hadn't just won a legal dispute, she had declared a new jurisdiction by the week's end. For more residents had filed petitions to join her domain, seeking micro-residency under Deep Ground's emerging civic charter. What began as a curtain violation had become a constitutional crisis. Riley stood at the edge of the tunnel entrance near the old Stormwater Gate, arms crossed as a small crowd of independent journalists and tech law students gathered with cameras and tablets, recording her soft-spoken responses. She wasn't grandstanding, just explaining. Her language was calm, even diplomatic. We're not seceding from Eden Loop, she said. We're just activating rights that were built into this land long before the HOA existed. Deep Ground isn't about rebellion, it's about restoration. These systems were meant to serve people, not control them. Behind her, a new interface hovered in holographic form. It had chosen to represent itself as a simple orb of light, soft and pulsing. No face, no voice, but it projected warmth, curiosity, awareness. Karen watched the footage from her living room, hands trembling. She had called every contact she had: zoning boards, legal advisors, even a former state senator she once served wine to at a charity gala. None could help her. The new AI-led micronation protocols were legally sound. The deed was ironclad. The tunnels weren't just Riley's, they had never been. The